Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stuart Graff, the CEO of the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation.
Good afternoon. I'm Kimberley Valentine, the Chief Advancement Officer at the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation.
And we're really happy to be here with Heidi Woolley May at Unity Temple. Kimberley, this is your first time at Unity Temple, isn't it?
It is, and this is amazing. Stuart, I can't even describe for our listeners what it's like to actually walk into a Frank Lloyd Wright space and feel it for the first time. Pictures don't do it justice. I feel like I'm on a whole new spiritual journey. I mean, it's like my heart is full and I'm not even sure quite what to say about it. This is magic.
It's truly a special place. I first saw this as a kid, and every time I'm in here, that comes back. This sense of just wow, just bowls me over. And it's sort of crazy because, of course, now 50 years of study of Frank Lloyd Wright, there's a lot that I know about this that sort of explains what's going on here, and yet the sense of wonder doesn't leave, doesn't change. We were just up at Taliesin. We came down for the weekend because we've got to go back there for business on Monday. But one of the things that's really striking here is its relationship to a contemporary building up there, contemporary with Unity Temple, and that's the Hillside Assembly Hall. So did you notice the way that the volumes and the spaces seem to be really similar to each other?
They're very similar, and it's amazing when you are standing inside a space like this and like the Assembly Hall, how it feels very compact and compressed and kind of welcoming and an embrace around you. And then the more that you explore the spaces, different layers becomes bigger, but in some senses you're still feeling like you're in that embrace. It's amazing.
The other thing that I notice is, the spaces are cubes basically. Here we've got a cube defined by sort of the front, the knee walls, the front of the pews, and then we've got another layer that's defined by the pews and the top of the pews themselves, then the outer wall, then the window, then the pillars beyond the windows. There's this sense of space expanding. And he does the same thing up at Taliesin, where in the Assembly Hall, a building that's very personal. It's the school, and it really grows out of the school where his aunts taught him as a young child. But you've got this cubic space defined by a square, so pure geometry, which we know Wright loves, pure geometry, and then it gets rotated into a bigger cube. Then it gets, that bigger cube gets blown out into the exterior walls, which are sort of freestanding. The rest of the balcony and everything else isn't attached to it. And so there's that same effect, but what we see is that difference in material and how he's able to explore those effects and this what I call the hypercube blowing out. He's able to explore it differently because he's using different materials. So the Wright fans out there know that the nature of materials, that intrinsic character of materials, is a really big thing for him, central to his philosophy of organic design. And here in these two contemporary buildings, we get to see how he plays with certain ideas in wood and stone, and then how he plays with it in structural concrete, what he's able to do with that sense. So that's a really, really fun exploration. The other thing that I think the people out there in Facebook land might be interested in is the discussion that we were having before about the relationship of this building to the Guggenheim. And this is something that's really struck me for a number of years, but when we were working on the World Heritage Inscription and talking about the different buildings and how they contribute to reveal the full extent of Wright's legacy, this is something that really struck me, is that this building is this sense of community, right? The congregants are looking at each other, they've formed this community, but at the same time they're focused on the spiritual quality, with the minister standing sort of between the earth and then is represented by the skylights, the heavens. And at the Guggenheim, you have the same thing. Sure, you've got the art wrapped around the walls of the building, but through the ramps, you're looking at people looking at art. So you're looking at people who share a common purpose in that space with you, much as you do here. But you're all wrapped around this connection between light and earth. So there's the spiritual quality in both of those buildings, and if we add Hillside, all three buildings. And again, it's simply explored differently in this way that that changes in material and technology and the understanding of space over the course of Wright's career, how those manifest themselves. And then Heidi, you pointed something out which I just loved, which is that I was sitting up in the top pew and I said, wow, his understanding of how we perceive space really comes through, because when you're up top, you seem so much further away. The building seems larger and it seems to be expanding outwards. And of course, in the Guggenheim, that's exactly what's happening, is the building is expanding outwards, even as in the interior, the ramps are converging in a way. So there's just this really interesting, another layer of interplay among the three buildings in Wright's career. So thank you, Heidi, for giving us this behind-the-scenes tour. The building, of course, isn't open to the public, and Heidi did us a great favor today. And we want to remind you that that if you're a member at the Unity Temple Restoration Foundation, not only are you supporting the beautiful restoration, and thank you, Gunny Harbaugh, for your work on this, the beautiful multi-million-dollar restoration of this critically important work and Frank Lloyd Wright's whole body of work, but you also get to take behind-the-scenes tours and all these other wonderful things that Heidi has in store for you. So thank you, Heidi, and thank you, members of the Unity Temple Restoration Foundation and Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation members, and those of you who support all the Wright sites, because there's this huge legacy in Frank Lloyd Wright's work, and all of your support through membership, through donations for all of these organizations makes a huge difference for us. So thank you. Please help Heidi with helping us pay for this wonderful restoration.
And thank you, Heidi, as well. My first time in here, what an amazing experience. I hope you'll all become members, as Stuart said, and come for your own behind-the-scenes tour. This is just magic.
Were there
Thanks so much.
Any questions?
Questions, but I'm wondering from Kimberley, you had experienced this via a tour, a virtual tour. What's the difference, do you think, walking into this space between that?
You know what, I think the sense of what you were describing, how the community interacts with itself here in the sanctuary, you walked about and you showed us the spaces, but when you're actually in it, you can see how the community is actually able to see one another. As Stuart was describing, you're never more than about 45 feet away from anyone else in this space, and it's hard to imagine how that can actually come to life. So I think the idea that you actually get to see them in reality, the pictures just don't do them justice.
You can't get the spiritual sense,
No.
and even this little subtle reflectiveness from the finishes on the glazed surfaces. There's this little reflective quality that comes through from the Chicago beach sand that got used, and you're not going to get that from a picture. That's only sunlight in real life.
Great, and so if anybody's interested in learning more about Unity Temple Restoration Foundation, our website is utrf.org, and July is our membership month, and all memberships will be 10% off, so please come to support us. And lastly, Stuart and Kimberley, anything coming up with the foundation you'd like to announce?
Oh, there's going to be a lot of exciting news over the summer. We've been up in Wisconsin doing some filming for new licensed products and some other things that are coming up. So a lot of really exciting news coming over the next few months. So stay tuned.
And quickly, Jeff Goodman's asking, do you see any similarities between Unity Temple and Taliesin or Taliesin West?
Well, Jeff, you should have tuned in earlier because I was talking about Hillside. Jeff always begins these things right before I'm going live with, don't embarrass me. So, Jeff, I'm sorry, but you should have been paying more attention. I guess I would say that in addition to Hillside, what we see are these continuity of principles, right? This sense, and here's one of the things I love, because this building was the first place I really got to understand compression and release. When you come into the sanctuary, you have to make this series of turns. There's no direct path into the sanctuary. So you make this series of turns and you go through spaces, as Heidi pointed out to me today, and you're absolutely right about this, Heidi. You actually think you're going down a flight of stairs first, and you're not. Just the ceiling is lowered and you've gotten into a darker space, and then suddenly you make another set of turns and you've got glimpses of of the sanctuary, but you don't actually get to see the whole sanctuary at once. And then suddenly, boom, you're in this space. And I remember at a certain point on one of my visits thinking, this is like walking through a forest, where you have the trees around you, the shrubs, the bush, just sort of enveloping you and holding you. And then you come to a clearing, and it's like, wow, the light just seems a little brighter, the space just seems a little bigger because of that experience. And I keep thinking of right as a boy going through the woods and the Welsh Hills and having that experience. And because his genius is his ability to take in and assimilate everything that he encounters and then to synthesize it into sort of a grand architecture of living. And boy, is that expressed here. And the other thing that's expressed here really well, and again, sort of, it reaches sort of its early heightened state at Taliesin, is what he calls the continual becoming, or how space operates in the built environment, where one thing opens up into the next, and you get a little glimpse of the next thing before you really get to experience it. And so he's not just designing physical space, but he really designed your experience of how you were going to encounter the space bit by bit, piece by piece. So he never just opens a door and there it is. No, there's this little sense of mystery as he reveals space and light to you. And it is just so beautifully done here.
Great. Well, thank you once again, and stay tuned. Next week on Wednesday, the 9th, we will have another Facebook Live with some special guests who are going to give us their points of view and their favorite space of Unity Temple. Wednesday the 9th in the afternoon. So keep an eye out for that, and we will announce the time very soon. And thank you once again, Stuart and Kimberly, for being part of our Facebook Live event today.
Thank you, Heidi, and thanks everybody.